everyone, welcome to the fourth video in the Coronavirus and Capitalism video series. In the first three videos, I went over some of the basic background information that's important to understand when studying economics. Now we're going to be focusing more specifically on economic principles most relevant to the US's system of capitalism. Today we're going to focus on understanding how prices are determined in a market, which is an element of capitalism. To do so, this video is going to focus on understanding the law of demand, then the law of supply, and finally we'll put these two concepts together to examine how prices are set. This video is going to demand your attention as I supply you with some important information. See what I did there? Some bad wordplay humor, I guess. But in all seriousness, here's a quick warning. Things are about to get a little graphic. This visual shows us the law of demand. As the demand curve shows, the law of demand says that as prices increase, the quantity consumers demand decreases. And conversely, when prices decrease, the quantity consumers demand increases. I doubt this is shocking. Just think of your buying habits in real life. Don't you buy more t-shirts when they go on sale? Don't you buy fewer movie tickets when the theater raises prices? You see, changing prices gives us an incentive to buy more or less, and this is shown visually by moving along the curve. There are two main explanations as to why we follow the law of demand. The first is the substitution effect. Here's how it works. I'm sure the lockdown has got you tired of cooking all your meals, so you decide to order pizza. However, if before you order you notice that the price of tacos has decreased, you will substitute tacos for the pizza. And this means the quantity of tacos you demand has increased because the price has decreased. The second explanation is the income effect. As prices change, you feel differently about your income. Or as an economist would say, you have a change in your real income, meaning how much you can buy with your paycheck changes when prices change. For example, if you go to the store expecting to buy one book for $16, but you find out there's a big sale, so books are only $12. You buy two books because the cheaper price makes you feel like you just got richer even though your income has not changed. And if prices increase, you feel poorer, so the quantity you demand decreases. The final aspect of demand I want to go over is the concept of elasticity. This refers to the fact that when prices change, the quantity you demand changes to a differing degree depending on the good or service. For some, demand is inelastic, meaning when the price changes, the quantity demanded changes very little. For example, if the price of face masks increases, the quantity demanded will not change very much because face masks are really needed right now. However, when demand is elastic, a change in price causes a great change in the quantity demanded. So if the price of a movie ticket increases, the quantity demanded will decrease greatly because there are many other things to do. Here's a side-by-side comparison of some of the key factors that cause demand to be inelastic or elastic. Of course, since we can see elasticity on the graph, there is a mathematical way to calculate elasticity, but at the start of this video series I said we aren't going to do math, and I'm sticking to that. In addition to a change in price, there can be other factors that change demand, but we'll focus on that in another video. As I go for a ride around my backyard, let's move on to examine the law of supply, which tells us what businesses will do when prices change. Specifically, the law of supply says that when prices increase, the quantity businesses supply will increase. And when prices decrease, the quantity supplied will decrease. This is because in a system of capitalism, businesses are trying to maximize their profits. As prices go up, businesses see the opportunity to make higher profits, so they are motivated to supply more. When prices go down, they see their profits falling, and so they don't want to bother supplying as much of a good or service anymore. I'm sure you've seen this happen. Think about when you go shopping for new clothes. You know, back when you were allowed to leave the house. The summer shirts at the front of the store were full price, and they were well stocked. But the leftover winter jackets were on clearance at the back of the store with huge price cuts and only a few left. The business is motivated to supply many t-shirts because the prices are high, and it doesn't want to supply any more jackets because the prices have dropped so much. Also, increases or decreases in supply may not only be due to one business supplying more or less. falling prices could cause businesses to leave the market, and rising prices may mean new businesses enter the market and therefore increase the quantity supplied. The concept of elasticity also applies to the law of supply, meaning as prices change, the quantity supplied changes at different amounts for different goods and services. So when supply is inelastic, businesses do not change their supply very much when prices change. However, when supply is elastic, the quantity supplied will greatly increase or decrease in response to changes in price. The main factor determining whether supply is inelastic or elastic is time. It's easy to supply more pizza when prices go up because a pizzeria can easily make more pizza tomorrow. But it's not easy for an apple orchard to supply more apples when prices go up because it takes many years for apple trees to grow. Over time, apple growers can increase the quantity supplied in response to high prices, but it's going to take a while. So as a generalization, supply tends to be more inelastic in the short term and elastic in the long term. Like with demand, we are going to ignore the math behind elasticity, and we're going to save examining non-price factors that impact supply for the next video. Right now, let's put the concepts of demand and supply together to understand prices. On this graph, you can see both the demand and supply curves. In a market with buyers and sellers, prices are determined by the forces of demand and supply. Generally, the US government is not involved in pricing. There are some exceptions, but we'll get to that in a little bit. First, we'll focus on the typical situation of the market setting prices on its own. When looking at this graph, the intersection of the two curves is called the equilibrium point. This tells us a few important things. First, this is where demand and supply are equal. And second, this tells us what the best price is for a good or service. Let's say we're talking about toilet paper. For this example, the best price for a pack of TP is $5 for a pack of 6. If the price is lower, say $4, there will be a shortage, meaning people are going to demand more toilet paper than is supplied. This is not good for business because the business is missing the opportunity to make more sales. If the price is higher than equilibrium, say $6, there will be a surplus, meaning the business is supplying more TP than people want to buy at that price. This is bad because the business isn't making any profits off of goods that aren't sold. So $5 is the best price because it is the most profitable price. This is how pricing works in a market. The interaction of demand and supply help a business figure out the best price and notice that the government isn't involved. If a business finds that there is a shortage of toilet paper for whatever reason, like people in lockdown have panicked and have decided the most important thing to stock up on is TP, the business will respond to the shortage by finding the new equilibrium point at a higher price. And if a business finds that it has a surplus of toilet paper for whatever reason, the solution is that the business will need to lower the price to find the new equilibrium point. To make sure this is clear, I'm going to directly connect what is happening here with the laws of demand and supply. As the price goes up from $4 to the equilibrium price of $5, two things are going on. The quantity demanded decreases as price increases, as the law of demand tells us. And the quantity supplied increases as price increases, as the law of supply tells us. So it is the market forces of demand and supply that determine prices. This does not mean you have to be happy when prices go up, but it is how a market works. I said earlier that in some very limited cases, the government may influence prices. Let's see how and why that may happen. But remember, this is not the normal situation in a market. When the government is concerned that the equilibrium price for an essential good or service is too high for many people to afford, the government may set a price ceiling, that is, a maximum price that can be charged. This is done to force prices below where the market wants. For example, some cities have a huge demand for apartments, and this causes prices to be very high, and therefore unaffordable for many working people. So the city government may set a price ceiling, called rent control, to force landlords to keep prices below equilibrium. This is good for renters who get cheap apartments, but the lower prices may discourage businesses from supplying more apartments. When the government is concerned that low prices may cause a problem, the government may set a price floor, which is a minimum price that can be legally charged. This is rare, but there's an example I'm sure you're familiar with. It's called minimum wage. For this to make sense, it's first necessary to understand that for an economist, a wage is just a price. It's not that your employer is paying you $7.25 an hour, it's that you are charging $7.25 an hour for your work. $7.25 is the price of your labor. Because the government has a price floor called minimum wage set at $7.25, you cannot charge less than that for your work even if the equilibrium point is lower. This is good for workers with jobs because it raises wages, which helps people pay their bills, but it may create a surplus of labor, meaning unemployment. But don't worry, the drastic rise in unemployment throughout March and April is due to the coronavirus situation, not minimum wage. I guess that brings us to the end of this video. Hopefully you've gotten a sense of how the forces of demand and supply work, and how their interaction determines prices in a market system. Next time, we'll focus on factors other than price that can change demand and supply. Until then, stay safe.